And welcome back to TWiP, aka This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Joining me today to discuss some of the happenings in the world of photography and beyond are Mr. Martin Bailey and Miss Sarah France. Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Great, thanks.
Sarah, let's start with you. You haven't been on in forever, and it seems like every time you come on, I say that. So we have to get you on more
I
frequently.
know, clearly.
What's going on with that? So,
I know.
what's happening in the world of France?
It's been busy. I mean, we have basically. I have a new business, France Photographers. I think I had that when we were on last time, but that's been really busy and picking up and amazing. And we just added a videographer to the team as well. So now it's me, two other photographers who shoot weddings on their own, and a videographer. So the team's expanding and growing, and we actually just got back from shooting a wedding in Martha's Vineyard with one of our TWiP listeners.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, Michael, he and his fiance wife now, are amazing. We had so much fun with them, and they're the coolest people. I love TWiP listeners. They're amazing.
That's cool. Well, hopefully very soon there'll be exponentially more TWiP listeners as we make this thing a little crazier. So, cool. I'm happy. You're like shooting. See, it's like, I don't know. You're crossing the streams there. TWiP host and, shooting the wedding of TWiP listeners. Is that even legal?
It is. It's amazing.
Barely is legal. Cool. And Martin, what's going on with you over in the sunny land of Tokyo?
Oh, too sunny. I'm doing my reverse hibernation at the moment, where I flick the aircon on and just sit indoors for a while.
Yeah, it's hot.
It's ridiculous outside, but no, it's good because it gives me time. I've been putting the final touches on next year's Iceland tour, and I'm just about to do this year's, so that's all good. Got a whole bunch of other stuff coming up. But the main thing I'm doing this week is writing a couple of articles for a future Craft and Vision photograph magazine. So,
oh, cool. Yeah.
And they've been the ones I'm doing at the moment. I've almost finished the second one, but they're quite in depth. So quite a lot of reading things up and making lots of diagrams and stuff. So I don't mind doing this stuff. I quite like using Illustrator to put diagrams together, and they always seem to look okay in the end, so it's a lot of fun.
That's cool. Awesome. Yeah. Everyone's always working on such cool stuff. It's exciting. Very, and I'm glad you guys take the time to do this show, even though you're so insanely busy. So thanks for that. All right. Before we jump into some of the interesting things that are happening this week, I'd like to thank our first sponsor for this episode, and that's our friends over at Shutterstock.com. All right, guys, let's jump into the show. First off, let's start with the story on Flickr. So let me read the blurb here. It says, in an effort to keep up with Getty and 500 pics, Flickr recently announced that they would be offering a new licensing experience. This new experience, or this new service, will provide a new way for Flickr members to partner with photo agencies, editors, bloggers, and other creative minds who are looking for original content. Now, Flickr's curatorial team will provide assistance, outreach, connectivity to help members get their photos licensed and connect them with photo editors to find exciting photography assignments. And they say members who are interested in this new program can sign up to be considered for that program and receive more information once it's available. So the gist of this is, of course, I'm going to take it here. Martin, I'm going to throw it to you first because I know you're in that world and you're doing some stuff with some other stock agencies. Feel free to tell us who they are. But the stock photography in general, now that Flickr is throwing its hat into the ring, my first knee-jerk reaction is we see, and we've talked about this on the show before, the whole phenomenon. I don't know if it's still there, but there was a whole phenomenon of people would shoot a lot of stuff and then dump it on Flickr, whereas conversely at a site like 500 pics, they would pick the best shot that they have and retouch it and make sure it's perfect and then kind of put it out there, and instead of just dumping everything out there. What do you think? I mean, can Flickr move in this direction, Martin, of doing this sort of licensure with that kind of catalog?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that 500px is self-curated. People only put their best work up there, like you say. Flickr, it's traditionally been like a memory card dumping ground, and a lot of people, they'll come back from a shoot and say, oh, look, I've got 500 photos of this stalk or something like that. And so it's like, you know, that the difference is that Flickr are going to be paying people to create, to curate the, you know, the content. Yeah. You put the check on, and they will say, okay, this is a great photograph. Can we license this, or do you want to try and sell this? And then they'll ignore the other 499 stalk shots and move on to the next set. Yeah. So I think that it's a difference between self-curation and Flickr curation, and they'll probably make it work. Yeah, I mean, personally, I haven't even logged on to my Flickr account in like 2 years, so I'm not involved, and it was never really for me one of the main sites that I work with. But I know that a lot of people have got a lot of quality work on there. The thing that I'm wondering about is how they're going to deal with the Getty and Flickr agreement that they've got. Because I mean, I remember I've still got, I think it's like 150 photos that Flickr said Getty want to license this image, and I did one a million years ago just to get in and see the pricing, and it was like you get like 60 cents a sale or something like that. So, and that's Getty. So, you know, obviously they're going to try and go up against. You mentioned, I mean, I'm with Offset. It's a sister company of Shutterstock, your sponsors this week, and they're selling my work. You know, I mean, for the longest time I tried to stick with the old traditional, like, you know, if it's advertising, it's going to cost you a few $1,000s. If it's this, it's going to cost you a few more $1,000s. And I tried to stick with that license model for a long time, but the sales just plummeted, you know. So, and it's the new world. It's nothing that we can do about it. I don't think that there's any way we're gonna get that back unless you're talking about people that are actually doing assignment work, and then you can still license the work because you're being paid to create something that is unique for a certain person, a certain customer. Yeah. But I think the stock, you know, things that you've actually shot yourself and put into the system, this is the new pricing model. And I think that companies like Offset are actually doing a pretty good job of raising the bar. You know, I'm getting more through Offset per sale than I would from a lot of other companies, and so for me, I'm happy with Offset. I think that 500px, their stock sales prices are comparable, and then we've got the new Flickr service coming up. I don't know what the pricing is going to be like, but I imagine they're going to be going head to head with companies like Offset and 500px, similar pricing. It's a little bit more than the really cheap royalty-free stock that we've seen over the last few years, but they're building. You know, that's become so saturated that the quality's starting to drop. And I think that, I mean, Offset are really handpicking their artists and the work that they publish from those artists. So if Flickr do that, I think that they've got a chance of making something. You know, how it will turn out, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and Sarah, I want to have you chime in on this too, because, you know, I look at this stuff, and I don't shoot stock, you know, and I never shot the old stock, you know, that was when they were licensing hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars per image, and then, you know, went through that whole you know, apocalypse, you know, or the iStockalypse or whatever, you know, and, you know, then people can pick up images for relatively cheap, and now it's kind of like Martin was saying, it's kind of climbing back up with this curatorial aspect to it as people figure out that, hey, free is kind of what you get if you pay for nothing.
You get what you pay for, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what do you think about this? Is this another way for the stock photography industry? Is it just continuing its evolution, and we don't know what that final organism is going to look like, or is this the end of the road?
I think it's so interesting to hear Martin talk about it, for one, because it's not an area that I've really delved into as well. So hearing his take on it is just so fascinating, and somebody who's in it and like making money off of it, and that whole process. So thank you for sharing that, for one, Martin. But also I see it, and I know I really have always felt like Flickr was a place for consumer, prosumer images. I haven't been putting my images there as well. However, I will say that Flickr has a ton of images on their site. I mean, there is such a huge gamut of images that are on there. So I don't doubt that there's some stock-worthy images that they have on their site. But I do think they're going to have a really, really hard time getting to those images and figuring that out and going through that whole process, and they're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time doing it. So will it in the end be successful for them? I wonder a little bit, because it just seemed like a huge feat that they have to do to kind of get to that point, especially too just overcoming how people perceive Flickr right now as more of a consumer and prosumer site. It's not necessarily the first place that they're going to look, but I think that if Flickr goes for like a little bit less expensive of a model, I mean, that's sad to say. It already sounds really inexpensive as it
They'd
is.
be paying us, I think, at that point, right?
Yeah. They're like, yeah, you get 10 cents if somebody uses your image. I mean, that's pretty much the market that they're in. It's the difference of high quality versus, getting somebody off the street who barely knows what they're doing. I mean, I'm sure there's good quality work on Flickr. I'm not saying that there's not, but they're going to have to be careful of how they come out of the gate, because they'll probably be, right away we'll make a judgment as if it's worth going there to look for stock images, or if it's not, our companies will kind of decide that and put them in a space right away. So it'll be interesting to see how they launch that and how they manage that.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that makes me encouraged about this article or this move by Flickr is just the fact that they're making moves, and they're, they're not. It seems like for a couple of years there, before Marissa Meyer came on, they were just kind of, is hanging out and rolling with their own speed, and 500 Pix came up, and all these other companies came up and started innovating, and they're just like the old man on the porch saying, yeah, whatever, I don't care, go out here. But now it's like they got a second and a third wind, and they're making moves. Whether they're right or wrong, we'll find out, but you don't know until you make a move, right?
That's so true. So true.
Yeah, it's exciting. So Martin, on you. So you're in this world. You sell stock, and you have before, and you're much more intimate with it than Sarah and I. Put on your thinking cap, or your fire up that DeLorean, and tell me what's going to happen in the future. What is this whole industry going to look like in, say, 10 years from now? In other words, is this the devil's advocate would say, okay, this is just scraping the bottom of the barrel of this market, and the people are trying to get the last few crumbs before it completely goes away. Or the glasses half full standpoint would be, this was just an evolution. Now this is the new direction, and it's picking up speed now. And with this curatorial aspect to it, people are, there's finally money in stock again. Where do you fall on that?
I think that there's, like Sarah said a moment ago, you get what you pay for, and there's, over the last 10 years we've seen the price of stock plummet, and that's, like I say, it's the new world. That's how it is now. There's no use worrying too much about the fact that we can't get the prices we used to get for stock photography. But I think that it'll probably continue. I'm probably wrong, but what I imagine is that there will continue to be a lot of quality work go out there into the world, and people that are, with digital, the learning curve became so much shallower, and I found, what's happened is that there's a lot of people that have just got great imagery that will throw it out there, and they're just happy to see it published, and that's why the new fee for stock imagery is often zero,
right?
And that's what's messing things up. Even the cheaper sites, they're only really charging enough to warrant the actual, the making of the licenses and the system behind it. I think that the curated set that we're seeing from Offset, and we'll probably see from Flickr, whether it works or not, and from 500px, that's a new norm that's coming in, because people don't want the average great photograph anymore. They want something that's more special. I mean, I personally don't shoot stock imagery. I'm not going up and setting up a movie theater on a Sunday morning filling it with friends and having them throw popcorn in the air while I take a photograph. That's very creative stuff, and I don't want to sound like I'm mocking that. It's creative stuff that people are doing to really sell good stock photography. But I mean, the thing is with Offset is that they actually take my Antarctica work, my Iceland work. They take photography from beautiful places and they'll sell it for me, and that's something that's different to the old model and from the old sort of what we call stock photography.
Yeah.
But I think that what's going to happen is people are going to continue to become really good photographers really quickly, and the market's going to continue to get more and more saturated with people that say, I don't need any money for this, I just want to see it on the front page of a magazine or something like that. And so they'll throw it out there, it'll get used, and I think that the trend is probably going to go towards the troubles that people have working with people that just give it away for free. And what I mean by that is, people don't know how to license photography. They say, oh yeah, so I want a credit with it, and then someone uses it, goes into they get permission to use it, they get a half-baked license from someone that doesn't really know how to write a license, and then they'll use it. Once it's in that company, in the system, someone will inevitably use it without giving the photographer credit.
Of course. Yeah.
And what you do there at that point is normally you say, hey guys, you probably should have given me credit, but it's no big deal. I hope it works out for you. Or you just shut up and don't say anything, because those people don't really although they should credit you for the work, things get so complicated that they can't find the licenses and things. And so I think that the companies are going to find that they'll be dealing with more and more friction from photographers that don't have a clue on how to license their work. And so that will probably make them think, you know what, it's free, but is it really worth it? It's like they say, nothing's more expensive than free. And so the people are going to probably start spending more time fighting battles with people that don't know how to license their work than it's worth. And then they'll probably go back to the stock agencies. And I think that it's probably gonna hold itself for a while more. Yeah. Whether it's going to be
if all that takes like, I don't know, 10, 15-ish years or so to kind of shake itself off, by that time I'm not even going to care. I'm going to be in my little hover around, scooting around town, taking pictures with my Google Glass and uploading them.
Some people have made good livings just selling stock photography, and they're the creative ones that are out there doing the cinema shots and actually setting stuff up and creating quality stock. And I'm not that person. I make images first and foremost for myself, and then the main thing that I want to use those images for is to illustrate the future tour web pages, and illustrate my ebooks and my magazine articles. And that, of course, in turn makes people say, oh, look at that, that's a nice photo, where was that shot? And then they'll look at the article and they'll say, oh, he's going to Iceland, no, I'll probably go with him. And so that all self-perpetuates. Yeah. That's my main marketing model. And for me, stock photography sales it helps to pay the rent. It doesn't fully pay the rent even, because, like I say, I'm not shooting stock photography. It doesn't fully pay the rent every month, but when I get a check, it generally keeps the roof over my head for the next month.
Yeah, and folks like Rich Legg, who we've had on This Week in Photo before, he's an iStock photographer, and he does what you just described a minute ago, Martin, fill a theater with friends, and he will conceptualize a shoot, and follow him on Instagram or whatever. He'll conceptualize a shoot, and then go shoot that in various sort of iterations, and put that up, and generate income from that, and then over the years, even if those images are only generating a couple of dollars a day or a week or something, times 1,000, that's some serious, cheddar every month coming in from just having these photos sitting in a database somewhere. So
it was Rich that I was thinking of. He's the guy that I recall talking about setting up the cinema shoot on a Sunday morning. And like I say, that's really creative stuff, and there's a living there. And I think that if you shoot that sort of work, it's the sort of thing that you can make a living at if you're good at it. Yeah. But you've got to be creative. It's not really what I'm doing.
All right. Well, guys, let's move on to the second story here. Bloomberg is reporting that Google is making plans to separate its Photos service from Google+, in an effort to attract more users to the service. Now, Google's previous photo service, Picasa, was rolled into Google+ several years ago, and though the service has proven popular, certain segments of the photography community, many users have complained about having to participate in Google's social network in order to access their photo service, and some have felt this prevented the service from growing. So by separating the photo service, Google, according to this article in Bloomberg, is hoping to appeal to a wider audience to compete with other services like, you guessed it, Facebook, Twitter, and of course Instagram, who's part of Facebook, or the question is, are they going up against 500 Pics and the Flickrs of the world? Now, of note, Google recently enabled its video conferencing service for business customers who were not members of Google+, and it could be that they're just, following suit down the road with the photo service. Sarah, what do you think about this? So, Google has taken flack since they launched Google+, and people are saying, hey, it's never going to be a Facebook and this and all that. But in the photography community, it has taken off. And, but to that first argument, as I look at my friends list in Google Plus and the people that I'm following, all photographers, 100% photographers.
Right.
So is this them? Could this, again, devil's advocate, could this be Google saying, Google Plus didn't work out, but this photos thing is awesome and people seem to dig that. Let's keep that around and make its own thing. Or is it just a spin-off and Google Plus proper is going to continue on and photos is going to continue on? What do you think?
Google just keeps getting bigger and bigger, so I can't imagine why they wouldn't just do it as a spin-off and keep all the other services kind of running that are continually to grow.
Yeah.
And I do think Google Plus has some really great qualities, and even if it's not a Facebook, it definitely has its own unique things that make it great. And one of those things is that a lot of really cool photographers are on it. So
but that's why I like it. You say, Sarah, even if it's not a Facebook, it's still blah blah blah. That's why I like Google Plus, because it's not Facebook. It's not Facebook.
If there's baby pictures, they're professional. If there's, it's not where you upload your iPhone photos. It's like where you go to actually show your good work and talk and have a good conversation. I think that Google Plus is a really great site, and I doubt that they're going to take Picasa and, even if they separate the two, I doubt they're going to get rid of Google Plus. I think that Picasa had its own following to begin with, and rolling it in, I can see, I guess, why a few people didn't really like the roll-in. I'm sure they're just allowing the separation so that people don't feel like locked in specifically, you have to do this in order to do this. But Google Plus is really integrated in a lot of stuff.
Everything.
It's insane. So really, the power of Google Plus is pretty incredible for photographers, and I can't imagine that they would get rid of that. Really, it's powerful for anyone. But I think we just love how the images look and how they display them, and really how they treat the community. So I think it's great that they're continuing to grow and invest in the photography side of the business, and I think really separating Picasa out will just be one of those things that makes their suite even sweeter.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think from my standpoint, if they split it out, I think, of course, I'm not in the battle room in Mountain View at Google while they're figuring all this stuff out, all their their MBAs and whatnot, figuring it out. But I'm thinking from my consumer perspective that if they split it out, that means many more people will be able to use the service. Obviously, giving us more, as a photographer, more eyeballs to look at the work that we put up there, and it becomes more of a mechanism to market to from a marketing standpoint and get word out about other things that we're doing. Seems like that is a positive, especially, which I'm sure they would do. They keep the ties into Google Plus, because then you still have your Google Plus account, and you put stuff over here, it shows up over there. If they keep those ties going, I think that's awesome. Martin, when you look at something like this, let's assume that this is true and Google's going to split it off from Google Plus, the Photos section, app, whatever. Does this put them directly in Thunderdome with Flickr and 500 Pics?
I don't know. I think it's the problem that I'm seeing is that a lot of people don't want to be, not a lot of people, but there are people that don't want to be in Google Plus, and that's obviously part of the reason why they're thinking of this split. But there are some people that just want to have a way to store and look at their photographs.
Yeah.
And I think that their photographers generally have a system already. They want, they've got Lightroom, they've got Aperture, they've got Bridge or whatever, and so photographers are generally already set with that stuff. I don't need an online service for that, or I mean, I actually have Picasa loaded on one of my computers so that I can go in behind Google and change titles and things like, and album names, things like that.
Yeah.
But that's all I use it for. I don't need it for anything else. In fact, this story reminded me that I had it installed and I deleted it because it keeps a copy of everything and it's a couple of gigabytes of data on my drive.
Yeah.
So for me, it was the reverse. But I think that photographers, people that consider themselves a photographer, are already set. They don't really necessarily need that sort of service. And if they want to share images online, there are already other great alternatives.
Yeah.
Some people might use it, but I think that the main people that are going to use a service like this are more family snappers, and people that they've got images, they want to share them with friends and family and things like that. They don't really know how to do that, so they'll just use something that they stumble across.
Yeah.
And I really don't see much more than that. Photographers that are interested in actually talking with other photographers, they'll just go straight into Google Plus anyway. Facebook is more for photographers. It's more of a marketing thing. And as far as just like, I mean, my sister is on Facebook, and all you see is photos of her with 5 other friends in a pub. Everyone's got the glass in the air and stuff. Great, that's what it's for, but that's what a lot of people use Facebook for. So when we talk about all of these photographs that go on Facebook, from a photographer's perspective, they're not really photographs. They're snaps. They're people's memories, which is fine. But it's not what a photographer uses Facebook differently. And I think that's why a photographer probably is going to come in for the front end and be fine with working with Google Plus. And what we're talking about here is something that will be more for your consumer sort of snap shooter.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's anybody's guess what the future is going to hold. I want to, again, get jumping back into the time travel DeLorean again for both of you guys. If you look forward into the future, when I look at this, I'm thinking like, okay, Google, first there's Picasa, right? Then Google Photos, and of course Google Plus, and then Google purchased Nik software and integrated them tightly into Google Plus Photos and all their control point technology and all that stuff, which is amazing, by the way, if you haven't tried it. It really works well. Undermarketed, in my opinion, because it's amazing piece of software that runs in your browser. But I'm thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if Google decided, you know what, let's pick up that little company down the road in San Jose, Adobe, and make them part of Google Photos, or make this whole photography pro to consumer workflow thing that dominates the photography space. Couldn't they do that? I mean, I don't see a whole lot of antitrust there. Adobe's relatively cheap when you look at Google dollars. I mean, Sarah, what do you think? You look shocked to me.
I mean, I love the way you travel into the future with your braid. So I think that's
world.
amazing. I'm like, wow, I never even really thought about that. But it's so true. I mean, Adobe has Creative Cloud now, and everything, they're really going very cloud-based. I mean, every company is, or really should be, in my opinion. So I think that's really a fascinating idea that could happen, or a thought that could happen, or even that Google could come out with a competitive product is another idea as well.
Totally.
I mean, right now, Adobe really has no competition. So
no.
they really are a monopoly in the market. So it would be interesting to see them kind of get challenged even by somebody else. But yeah, I think that's really a fascinating idea that those two could kind of come together. And I think Picasa is, from what I've heard from it, I haven't really used it, but it sounded like it was more for a consumer market.
Yeah, totally.
And totally. I think Martin made a really good point in that might be another reason why they're separating it from Google Plus, not only from that perspective, but also to separate it from the professionals who don't see any use for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think would be my kind of perspective on it. I was like, oh, Picasso being separated out. I didn't even really know it was there. So
Right. Yeah. I never really used Picasso either. So Martin, what do you think about that? I mean, about the, of course we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen, but just to go on the record, I have been right before about this stuff. With the latest thing being Aperture and other things before, I've been very prophetic. This might be the latest in my prediction. So, what do you think? Adobe and Google sitting in a tree?
I think it's a possibility, but I mean, I don't necessarily. You mentioned what they did with Nick Software's plugins.
Yeah.
I use the plugins religiously. I still, for Black and White, Silver Effects Pro, and I run a lot of my landscape work through Color Effects as well. I love those plugins.
Yeah.
But they haven't been updated in a long time. There's been some additions. There's been the analog effects is pretty cool, very gimmicky, but it's pretty cool. I from a photographer's perspective again, the first thing that people do when they get onto Google Plus now and they see, for example, the auto enhancements that Google think is really cool and they're just going to turn it on by default.
Right.
The first thing that photographers do is, oh my God, what's happened to my photos? How do I turn that off?
Mm-hmm.
And then people run in and turn it off. But my sister, who's uploading her photos of friends in a bar, is probably going, oh, that looks really cool now. Mm-hmm. Great. And then they move on. So again, it's more consumer based, and I think that the photographer generally wants more control, and my fear is that if Google did buy Adobe, then there'd probably be, well, no, I mean there's a huge user base already out there, so
they would not let that market languish.
They wouldn't. I'm not sure how innovative they would be, because just looking at what they've done, they seem to buy things up and then just let them stagnate. Yeah. They're doing a lot of great stuff and are very innovative, but some things you see them buy it and then it just stagnates, and it's almost as though they're buying it just to get it out of the way.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
I doubt that would be the case with Adobe if they did buy them.
Right.
It's too big.
And I think you look at Adobe's portfolio again. One of Google's now arch enemies is Apple, right? And Apple is in that space too, or were in that. Well, they're going to have the Photos app, and Aperture's no longer here, but there's a Photos app that's coming, and then of course there's Final Cut Pro. They were in the soundtrack space, and then they killed soundtrack and animation, all that stuff. So they, in a lot of ways, they were head to head with Adobe, and then kind of turned the direction and went head to head also with Google on this stuff with iCloud and all this other stuff and iPhoto. So I'm thinking if Google picked up Adobe's portfolio of software, that gives them a lot of ammunition to at least thumb their nose at Apple. So I mean, and it could really heat it up on the competition side. Maybe it'll light a fire on Apple to start doing more stuff on that pro side again, and I don't know. It's just I'm armchair quarterbacking clearly, but it could get interesting in 2015, 2016. I don't know.
Yeah,
if someone could get Apple to go back and more heavily into the pro market, I would love it. Somebody please.
Frederick, the thing is, when you armchair quarterback, I mean, you worked for a lot of these companies. It's like you were a quarterback, so you're qualified to do that.
Right. I wasn't a quarterback. I was more like a water boy. So
water boys know more than you think they do.
Yeah, I was listening, but I did not get my hands on a football, so till the end of the game, I guess. No, it's good. It'll be exciting. I think the takeaway from all this is really cool. Whatever happens, a lot of this stuff is going to be good for us, as photographers. When you get down to the finger pressing that shutter button and looking at an image, we just have more and more choices that are coming up for us. And, hey, choice is good, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of choice, full frame versus crop sensor. So our good friend Zack Arias over there on his blog, he posted an article discussing the virtue of the crop sensor cameras versus full frame. And a few years ago, he was of the opinion that full frame was the only way to go. And recently, he changed his opinion on the matter and thinks that the technology of crop sensors or on-crop sensors has improved so much in the past couple of years that cameras like his Fuji X-T1 compare very well against full-frame cameras like the D3 and the 5D Mark II in terms of things like depth of field, detail, ISO performance, etc. And he contends that you don't even notice a significant difference until you jump up to medium format. So interesting. So, and this is going to get some heat, I know, because full frame people are full frame purists, Martin Bailey, Sarah France, you know. So when you hear an article like this, you know, Zach speaking the heresy that you don't need a full frame to get all this cool stuff, what do you guys say? Because you two are the DSLR shooters still. I mean, and I say still with the, you know, grain of salt, but you're still shooting DSLRs. You haven't moved into mirrorless or any of that stuff yet, Sarah France.
No.
What do you think about this? Zack Arias says you don't need a full frame unless you want. If you need all that stuff, go to medium format. Otherwise, go to something smaller like an XT1. What do you think?
I watched the video and it was really fascinating, and I love Zach. He's entertaining and smart and really
whenever
great.
people started off like that, there's a bomb coming.
Right? But what I meant to say.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big things that he didn't talk about that I guess I have an issue with is that I love having my wide angle and having my lenses be what they are. So I really felt like that was one thing that kind of got left out, at least for us and for me. I mean, the crop sensor, I don't use it really because, you know, there is a difference in quality, and it's not necessarily how big of a difference, it's that there is a difference in quality. So I get that a crop sensor maybe isn't as big of a difference as we've been making it sound, but I do still feel like it's not really the right tool for the professional market. However, I'm really glad to hear that it's not as big of a difference as maybe I thought it was in the past, because I think with some of the crop sensor stuff, they might have smaller cameras, like he was showing the one that he really liked, the Fuji. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that thing's really tiny. I would love to take it on vacation. I think that's really great. Like, so I feel like the smaller cameras and the higher quality that's coming out of those cameras is so awesome, and I love that. But I would never give up my full frame sensor or my camera for one of those at this point. Mm-hmm. I just feel like there's a lot of little elements that come into it, and one of those things, unfortunately, is that I have huge lenses, and putting a huge lens on a tiny little body is just like you can't even hold it in your hand. So on top of everything else, there's like an ergonomical issue with it as well. When I'm shooting weddings, I need a camera that I can hold in my hand that'll hold the lens that I need it to hold, and then it'll give me that really shallow depth of field and a really nice image. The best quality that I can get for the camera that I'm using, and I can produce those beautiful images. So even though he found that there was less difference in some areas than a lot of people make it out to be, it's still not what I would use for shooting weddings.
Yeah, and I hear you, and I've heard that before. So there's two sides of that. I've heard DSLR shooters say, you know, I would never do that, and then they shoot with a mirrorless, and then it's like, man, that's actually not bad. And then pretty soon, maybe 6 months later, they've bought one, and now they're trying to, you know. But who knows? But, you know, and then to your credit, Sarah, what you're saying about what Zach is saying there, a lot of this is situational and subject matter based too, you know.
Totally.
So there's that piece of it, and the other piece of the pie is just what you're comfortable with. I mean, it's not all about the gear, even though we have a show called that. It's not all about the gear. It's, you know, sometimes it's just the tactile feel that you've been shooting for a while, and you get that muscle memory built in of what this bride is going to look like when she's at that distance from you with this lens on. You know in your head that that's going to be a saleable shot. Click, you got it, you're on to the next thing, rather than going through the motions of building up the muscle memory again. But, you know, what you were saying about the lens size and all that, so I reached over and I got this thing. So this is one of my favorite lenses here. This is an Olympus 45 millimeter f1.8 lens, and there it is. So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm holding up this lens in the palm of my hand, and this has got to be one of the sharpest lenses that I have ever shot with in my entire life. Look at that. I'm holding it up between two fingers, and the depth of field is just insane. The shallowness of the depth of field, and it weighs nothing. So you put this on your camera, and it's like, really, that photo came from that lens, you know? And this is one of the lenses that got me into Micro Four Thirds, because I was like, wait a minute, that can do that? Okay, sign me
But
up.
that's a 51.8 is not that much bigger than that lens either. But if you look at a 51.2, now you're talking a difference of size, but you're also talking a difference of quality and depth of field and all that kind of stuff. So
and
it's
price.
I mean, yeah, price is like the number one, right?
Yeah.
That's the first one my interns are talking about. I'm like, oh, but you should get this one. I mean, I think that there is that little bit of difference, but it can make a huge difference between the quality of the finished image.
Yeah, I agree. Martin, what about you? I'm sure you watched this video, and on past TWiPs, you started from the Sarah standpoint, because I remember early on you're like, no, I'm always gonna shoot full frame. This is what I do. You can't be shooting snow monkeys with that small stuff, you know. And then I remember on a more recent show, you said something like, you know what? I think I'm going to experiment a little with the mirrorless cameras. They're not that bad. I'm kind of intrigued. Everyone's talking about them. What do you think about this video from Zack? What did this make you think?
The video itself is hilarious. It's Zack. Yeah,
it's Zack, of course.
He's done a really good job with the video, and he makes a lot of great points. And I think that the thing for me is if you're talking about full frame and crop factor within a DSLR, within the boundaries of a DSLR, I don't like, and I know that I'm going to annoy probably 70% of your audience by saying this, I don't particularly like crop factor DSLRs because of a few reasons. The lenses, unless you buy EFS lenses in the Canon system, the short, the ones that are designed for crop factor,
right?
You're carrying a big lens around, but you're only using the middle 2/3 of it. And also, the viewfinder is a lot darker on crop factor SLRs. When I look through my 5D or my 1DX, the viewfinder is actually a lot brighter, and that makes a difference, especially if you're manually focusing and things like that. So there are reasons why I don't particularly like crop factor DSLRs, but the Fuji and the OMDs and the current lineup of mirrorless cameras, they're excellent, and the lenses are smaller, and there's a lot of things going for them. But I think, and like Sarah touched on, there are things like very extreme wide angle they're not so good at sometimes. But again, when the camera's designed for that wide angle, they can still do it, and it's not such a big deal. For me, I mean, I'm a nature and wildlife photographer, so the wildlife part, I need 600 millimeters. And Zack's saying, oh, the real difference, if you want a big difference, you need to go to medium format. Have you seen the size of a medium format 600 millimeter lens?
Yeah.
I mean, my 35 millimeter gear is big and heavy already. Yeah. So it's horses for courses. If you're shooting mainly between, I don't know, say 24 and 200 millimeters, then the mirrorless systems are excellent. And I know that there are longer lenses, and you can do all sorts of stuff. It's great. But the other thing is that there are, as far as I'm aware, there are no, I think the Panasonic maybe, I'm not sure, Pentax, I'm not sure, but there's very few mirrorless cameras that are fully weatherproof. So for me, I mean, I work in pouring rain, in freezing cold, in all sorts of, in Namibia with dust everywhere, stuff like that. I need the weatherproofing and the dustproofing of these systems, and that's not quite there. Now, the reason I'm kind of coming around, as you were saying, Frederick, is that I do see some very, very good quality mirrorless cameras now. The autofocus is the other thing. I mean, that for sports and wildlife, you need really snappy autofocus, and that's not quite there on
running
mirrorless
too.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that there's still a lot of areas where they're not quite there, but they're getting there, and they're already a lot better than they were 2 years ago. So I'm thinking that there are situations where I'm going to be jumping on mirrorless before too long. The only reason I don't already have a mirrorless system is financial. I can't really afford to go out and buy another system. I know that I can use things like the Metabones and use my Canon lenses, but if I'm going to use the big heavy lenses, like Sarah says, I might as well just use my body that's made for it.
Right.
But there are times when I'm humping around an 18 kilogram or a 40-pound bag of gear, and I'm thinking, Jesus, mirrorless cameras sound really nice right now. And so it's going to happen, and I think that full weatherproofing and a little bit more improvement in the autofocus is required before I get there. But
it's inching forward, though. Like you said,
it's almost there.
And it just, the cameras that came out this year alone just blow me away. Like the A7 series, A7S, A7R and A7 from Sony, and the Olympus, and of course the Fujis, and then the Panasonic Lumix series with the GH4 and the 4K. All that stuff to me, just all that stuff out there and all those choices seems really, really exciting versus a DSLR that now has a shutter speed sync at this speed rather than this, or it does this frames per second now, and last year's did 1 frame per second less. Come on.
The innovation at the moment. We were talking, like when I titled the last month the if you have poo, fling it now. when we were talking about Sarah's wondering what
I'm really
what
sad I missed that. Really sad.
So we were talking about how Canon and Nikon are not really innovating very much at the moment.
Yep.
And they need to do something. They probably are. There's rumors about Canon looking into the medium format market as well. There's a lot of stuff that those guys need to do to keep the revenue coming in, because at the moment a lot of people are hordes of people are moving over to mirrorless,
right?
And with good reason. But they've at the moment, the people that are sticking with DSLRs are people like me that need the weatherproofing and the autofocus, like Sarah. There's always going to be people that want to stick with it, but gradually the people that don't need the super telephotos or the weatherproofing or the snappy autofocus, and autofocus is getting there too. I mean, we were talking about that video. There's a lot of improvements, and they're workable. The difference is now it's whether you want to nail most of your shots or some of your shots. And if you're happy with nailing a few, it's a difference between buying, I don't know, a Mini Cooper and a Ferrari.
Right.
If a Mini Cooper's going to do the job for you, then go with it. And Mini Coopers are great cars anyway. So I don't want to put them down, but
I was going to say, it's like mirrorless is kind of like a Tesla, but sometimes, even though as cool and sweet as Teslas are, sometimes you just need a Ford F-150, to get the job done. It's, does everything you need, has everything the Tesla has, minus a couple of cool things, but it does the job, and it's weather sealed, right, Martin? It gets it done. So. There's no right answer. I don't think there's ever. I mean, it's fun to debate this stuff, but there's never a right answer on you have to go into this system or you're not a real photographer or whatever. You could shoot with DSLRs into 2020. You could go back and go get a Canon, EOS, whatever, back in the day and do world-class weddings with it, Sarah, because you have the skill to do that. The tools are kind of just make things a little easier, more fun, more lightweight, and all that. But you, as a photographer, you're an artisan. You can pick up any paintbrush and create cool stuff. So, it's fun to debate it, but don't get.
Well, the thing that one of the main points that Zack was making about the film size, and if people haven't watched the video, just go and watch it. Even if you don't care about this, it's just so funny the way he puts this across. But the thing that he's pointing out is, I mean, really, when you look at the difference in size between the sensors, the difference between an a crop factor, APS-C or whatever it is, and a full frame is really quite small compared to even a medium format.
Yeah.
And So as he said, the difference in image quality is negligible, and it is. That's a fair statement. So for me, it's not the image quality that's really making the difference between me sticking with full frame DSLR. It's all the other stuff we're talking about.
Yeah. And there's other arguments, like Sarah was saying, the depth of field in bokeh that you get. There's a difference there, but quality-wise, we're just seeing. I mean, iPhone photos are being used in gallery showings and stuff like that. I mean, and look at the size of that little sensor in there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There's great work coming out of all of these cameras. It's not the camera that makes the photograph.
Right.
So,
It's the photographer.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, let's dive into some listener questions now. This week's question comes to us from Richard Simcoe via our Google Plus community page, which is over 8,000 members now. So if you're not a member, please join it. His question is, I would love to know about photo printing and fulfillment service recommendations for Squarespace e-commerce. What I'd like to do is sell through Squarespace e-commerce to have a third-party company's printing and fulfillment service hooked up, completely transparent to the buyer. For example, the user never leaves my Squarespace site. And third, preferably the printing and fulfillment company delivers the products worldwide. He's not located in the U.S. Any suggestions, help, etc.? Martin, I'm going to throw this to you first because you wrote a book that's out on Craft and Vision on printing and that sort of thing. But, of course, he's talking about fulfillment services. But you're the printing guy. So what do you think?
Well, the thing is, I obviously Squarespace sponsor my podcast, so I've got access to their system. I went in and took a look. And I can't really find any way to couple a fulfillment system in the back end. It might be there, but I would suggest that before we really talk too much about that, Richard should probably just drop. I mean, they've got great support at Squarespace. Yeah. Just drop the support guys a line. Yeah. One thing that I would point out is that Richard says that he's not based in the US. I see from his Google Plus profile that he's in Singapore. If he doesn't have a US address, he might be out of luck anyway, because Squarespace use Stripe for their
payment process.
Yeah. And it's not available in Singapore yet. It's available in a number of countries, and I mean, I've put you can go to stripe.com/global, and there's a map there that shows you the countries that you can be in to use Stripe. So he might be out of luck anyway with Squarespace because of those restrictions. So I would check that before you do anything else. Make sure that you can actually get a Stripe account. If you can't, the other option, and this is something that I did a podcast a few weeks ago. If you go to mvp.ac/428, episode 428 of my own podcast, I did a very detailed walkthrough of art storefronts, and they are a new company that's opened up in the US. They're using mainly breathing color media to print on. If you use the art storefront fulfillment, they use PayPal to take the payments. So that's in fact, it doesn't really matter because they pay you after they pay you the difference. Oh. You set up the amount that you want to pay. That you want people to charge. You want to charge people for your prints, but then they fulfill the prints, send it anywhere in the world, and then just pay you the difference. So if you set it at 100%, you get if it costs them say $20 to make a print, you're gonna charge $40, and they're gonna send you the $20 difference.
I like it.
But
what's the name of that company again, Martin?
Art Storefronts.
Art storefronts. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, the website itself. If all you want is a website and a photography website, I still say Squarespace is better. But if you want to sell fine art prints and you want, either whether you want to self-fulfill or whether you want to have them fulfill for you, Art Storefronts is great. They've got a really good system that mocks up you can actually look at your images on a lounge wall or a nursery wall, and you can mock it all up with the gallery wraps or framed prints.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've ordered test prints from these guys, and they're awesome. Breathing color's in the background, so when I don't use any other media than breathing color, another thing that they do that's really, really good is once you pay your yearly membership at Art Storefront, they will that you get access to their wholesale print sales. So you can actually go in and say, send me, or for a customer, you can set up a store for other people to order prints from you, and you take the difference.
Yeah.
So their own prints. But the wholesale thing, what is you actually can go in and order a 40 by 60 inch gallery wrap for the price that it costs them to make it and ship it to you. And that is really big, because that means I can't make, my printer behind me is 24 inch wide. I can make 20 by 30 inch gallery wraps, these things that we see on the walls behind me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't make 40 by 60 or anything larger than 20 by 30. So for me, that gives me the ability to very cheaply create a very large gallery wrap as well. And so, it's worth looking into. And I don't want to steal Squareface's thunder here, because, they are a great service, but there's limitations that I think that Richard might find himself up against soon. So maybe take a look at that.
All right, Sarah, you want to add anything to that? Any thoughts about fulfillment and that sort of thing? And by the way, who are you using for fulfillment for your business?
We use a plethora of different offerings.
A plethora.
Depending on if the client comes to us or uses our online system. So the online system, we use Pass, and they do the print fulfillment through White House.
Mm-hmm.
Custom color, and they do basically our 4x6, 5x7, 8x10s, or 8x12s, and then we handle everything else. So most of our clients come to us for albums and wall mounts, and we actually have consultations where we meet with clients to go over wall design and
Nice.
meet with them in their home. So we do more of a consultative selling when it comes to our products and making sure that our clients are getting their heirlooms and that they're decorating their houses and those things. When it comes to loose prints, Mom and Aunt May, they can take care of those online and get those prints from a really nice, great lab that has beautiful print fulfillment. So we're really happy with the system right now.
That's cool.
Yeah. I wish I had some more advice for him, but Martin really handled that. So.
Oh yeah, no, that was perfect. I think that listener, what was the listener's name again? That listener, where is it? I lost
Richard Simcoe.
Richard, yeah, thank you. Richard will be very pleased with that. That we should write that up, Martin. We should have that transcribed, because that was a perfect answer for that question. All right, guys, let's jump into the picks of the week. This is the segment where you guys can recommend something to the TWiP Army, as long as it's related to photography. Ladies first, Sarah France, what's your pick of the week?
Okay, so my pick of the week is kind of a funny one this week. I have been delving in a little bit into Lightroom trainings, seeing that Aperture is dead.
The cats and dogs are getting along. What is happening?
I know. So I actually called up my friends at Creative Live, and I was like, please tell me which of these trainings to watch. There's so many, and I don't know where to start. And so I got a few of them, and I put them as my pick of the week. Jared Platt does a really great job teaching some Lightroom trainings, and I love Julianne Koss. If she teaches anything, I just want to watch her. She's so entertaining and educational, and just a wonderful person. So I got her course as well, and it was fantastic. So we're looking now. We're not making a quick move over by any means, because Aperture's not going anywhere. It's just not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere, but it's not going anywhere.
Right.
So we are currently in the middle of our busy season, so it's definitely not a time to make a quick change.
Sure.
But we're definitely doing the education and the work, and I'm posting about it on the blog a lot. I just posted a post, and I'll put it in my pick of the week as well, just about what we're doing, the transition that we're making, some suggestions for other Aperture users, and at what point it makes sense to move to Lightroom or to stay and wait and see what's going to happen with photos.
The Photos app,
Yeah, so I think there's a totally two, 3, 4 different markets there who are going to have different situations. For us, shooting weddings and working with a post-production company that uses Lightroom and all of that, there's just no other option for us with our professional photography than to go to Lightroom for our post-production. But
Right.
there's so much support out there, and I'm really excited to kind of delve in and really see what can be done with Lightroom and kind of making that transition over. So I think
I
it's
kind of have a
exciting,
tear in my
and
eye now that Sarah,
I
that
know
you're. It's a
you
tear of
guys.
joy. It's like Sarah France, is moving over. Are we going to see some training from you on Lightroom? You think?
Well, you'll probably see some training from me on making the transition for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm definitely no Lightroom expert by any means,
But you
but
will be in like 10 minutes, as fast as you
yeah,
learn.
it won't take me long, that's for sure. And it does have a lot of similarities in the way that it works to Aperture, obviously. There's some nice things, there's some things I'm already sad and miss, but I am kind of excited. Like a few of the things that we've discovered in Lightroom that I didn't know were there, or that just came out with the newest versions, have been pretty cool with working with our post-production company, because it's just making anything that can make things faster for me is like amazing. But I wrote in my blog post about Aperture, I wrote a eulogy, which was actually the Aperture team said that they cried.
No.
but but they're moving over. The Aperture team's moving over to the Photos app and doing a really great job of developing that. I just think, like I was saying earlier, and like we've known for a while, it seemed like Apple is moving in a direction of consumer prosumer and a little bit more away from the focus on the professional market like they did in the past. So that the reality of that was a little bit tough. The Aperture news hit me like everyone else, like a complete shock, to be honest. I really thought they were working on a release of a new product, and I didn't know why I hadn't seen it, but I was like, okay, well, I'm sure it's coming out soon.
Yeah, it was sad. It's, to lose a major player in the space, regardless is, I don't think it's good at all. I mean, who knows what the Photos app is going to bring, but still, it's like, competition. Can somebody compete with Adobe on this
I know,
stage?
Seriously.
Please.
Come on, I thought if anyone was in it, it was going to be Apple for sure, but
Right.
I think I don't know. Honestly, I think it's just really their bigger focus, and I know they're going to make a great Photos app, and it's going to be amazing for all of my consumer and prosumer stuff that, just all the kind of personal stuff that I do, but unfortunately, it's just there's no way for it to compete with what I need professionally with Lightroom.
Right. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Scary stuff, but good in a good way. Change is scary. Change is scary, and change can be good too. So
exactly, we
Mark
embrace
Bailey,
it like always.
What'd you say, Sarah? I'm sorry.
We embrace it like always.
Yes, because what choice do we have? Right?
Exactly.
It's like watching people, people that are like Sarah that have really loved using Aperture over the years, and then watching the reaction. It's almost like when Elvis died. It's like, I mean, that was before your time, Sarah. But I remember like when I was quite a little kid still, and like the news came over, Elvis has died, and my mum's crying, and everyone's having a really hard time with it. It's almost like that, watching people's reactions to Aperture being cut. It's,
it was like when Steve Jobs died.
Yeah. Oh, that was different again, but that was such a loss.
Yeah, it hurts to lose anybody, anything, in varying degrees of impact. But I hear you.
Martin, I saw your pick of the week, and I am dying to hear about it. So please tell me.
Yes, Martin, what's your pick? I went and looked at that too. I want to hear what you have to say about it. What is it, Martin?
Okay, so all photographers use email. So I've got this very loose connection to a photography pick of the week. But I've been, I'm a Mac user, so I use I've been using the Apple Mail program for a number of years, but it doesn't feel as though it's really helping me with my email. And I decided to have a look around. I tried a few other options as well. Didn't quite get along with them, but I tried MailPilot, and MailPilot it's basically task-based email. So what you do is I think it's like $10 in the App Store. But what it is, it's basically you go through and you have fingertip keyboard shortcuts for everything. And then when you've finished with an email, if you you can whisk it off to folders in a couple of keystrokes. You can put it into lists in a couple of keystrokes, and it basically works you down to something that people are talking about these days called zero inbox, which is where you've got nothing left in your inbox. And what I tend to do is so far with mail and when I was a Windows user with Outlook, and I've left things unread, meaning that I've got to get back to them and work on them. But once an unread mail goes down the list a little bit, you tend to forget about it, and then you have to go back and check your unread mail, and it kind of gets into a bit of a pain. And you leave everything that you think you might need at some point. You leave it in your inbox, and it becomes this beast of a monster that you don't even want to open anymore.
You're gonna make me cry.
But with Mail Pilot, what you do is you whisk stuff off into various places. Or if you want to archive it, when you've read it, you don't want to delete it, or you don't want to put it into a list or a folder. Just hit the space key, and it puts it into your archive. And then the other great thing with it is that you can turn emails into tasks. So say I get an email that tells me I know that I need to reply to someone in 3 or 4 days' time. You hit S to set it aside. And then you can go in the calendar and hit a number for 4 days from now or 5 days from now, or just setting it aside will put it into a list of tasks that you go to later. And so you literally, it will remind you of when you've got to reply to your email. But once you've put it into your task list like this, it removes it from your inbox. So every time you open your email, within a few minutes, even if you've got a whole bunch of stuff, within a few minutes you can get down to zero inbox and have nothing there. But it doesn't mean that you have to go away and look for everything else, because if you set something to remind you in 3 days' time, when you open your email in 3 days' time, there's going to be a today section, and it's got all of the emails that you need to reply to today. And if you don't reply to them today, you can either move them forward a few days again, or it'll put them in a past due section. But it's so refreshing to open email and see nothing there.
Yeah.
And it just makes it so easy to do it. Now there's an iPhone version that syncs with it, but version 1's pretty buggy, and I can't even get it to connect to my IMAP email servers. The support team are really helpful. I've sent them a whole bunch of things like it's a relatively new product, so if you want to go in there and expect a really polished feel, it's not quite there. But the support team they've got their ears open there, and they're helpful. The iPhone app version 1 it's okay, but it's not great. Like I say, I can use it with Gmail, I can use it with my iCloud email account. I can't use it with my own main server, which is my main email account. But version 2's coming, and there's going to be a lot of changes. So version 2 on the iPhone is going to be pretty cool as well. At the moment, I can't really recommend the version 1 iPhone client, but on the Mac, it's like I'm I'm sold. I never want to open Apple Mail again.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I kind of pushed myself into using the web UI of Gmail as my primary mail client for a lot of reasons, mainly because I was hitting synchronization issues all over the place, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to access my mail through the browser and get it nailed that way, and then have clients on my devices that then go into that main thing. So I'm using what am I using on the iPhone? Mailbox. So I'm using an app called Mailbox on both the Mac and or not the Mac, on the iPhone and the iPad. So, and then on the Mac, of course, it's in Chrome. And that seems to work out okay for me because I can swipe back and forth and set delays for things to pop back into my inbox and that sort of thing. And I don't think there's a correct solution for any of these clients. There's ones that fit you better, much like cameras. I think there's ones that fit the way that you like to do mail better and your flow and all that. But I don't think there's any perfect one yet. And sometimes I even the Gmail client on the iPhone and iOS is actually really good, and it works perfectly with the service. So sometimes I just think, I'm just going to go back to that because it just works.
One of the other reasons that I was really hoping to find a good alternative to Apple Mail is that I work on two computers all the time. I've got my laptop that I'll use around the house, and then I've got my iMac in my studio here. And I will. So far, what I've had to do is I use a program called ChronoSync to actually copy my mail folders to my iMac if I need to open mail on there. But it takes about 10 minutes.
Dude,
I've got gigabytes of stuff, and IMAP, just it references the folders on your mail server, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the archives. I've got loads of archives of old mail.
Yeah.
And they've just, I'm thinking that the mail app on the Mac is now my archive. That's where all of my old mail will live. But from now on, MailPilot, I can open it on my iMac, soon on my phone as well, and on my MacBook Pro, and it will just sync automatically, and everything will be all beautiful, and the world will be amazing, and the angels will sing and everything.
Yes, and you'll go get a mirrorless camera, and it'll all be good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's close this off. We're at the end of another episode of This Week in Photo. Sarah France, where would you like folks to go to connect with you, hire you to shoot their wedding, or just, kind of see what you're up to?
Yeah, so you can always go to my website, sarahfrance.com. Our new site is francephotographers.com. You can get there from my website or just go straight to francephotographers.com. Go check out our blog. We have actually been blogging. I know it's crazy. I know it's crazy. Luckily, I have two amazing photographers who blog as well, and they have way more interesting things to say than I do, so that's even better. But you can always find me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+. I'm all over the place. If you can't find me, then
there's a problem. Yeah, Sarah and France together, you own the Google. So people, you should, at a certain point, Sarah, you should just be able to say, you know what, just Google me. That's it. Just Google me. That's it.
It's usually always just Google me.
Just Google me.
I love the new site because it's not my name. It's France Photographer, so it's there, but it's a hint of me. So go check that one out. We just posted a little promo video thing with just us girls kind of wandering around shooting each other and having some fun. So it's great.
Sweet. Awesome. Congratulations on the launch.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Martin Bailey, where can people go to connect with you, sign up to shoot those snow monkeys, or keep track of your adventures in mirrorless?
Yeah, I actually, I'd like to just do a quick shout out. I've got another in-studio Pixels to Pigment workshop coming up in 3 weeks, and we've still got a couple of spaces. So if anyone wants to, if you're in Tokyo or you're in Japan and you can get to Tokyo, and you want to optimize your digital workflow and do a bit of printing and take away a 20 by 30 inch gallery wrap, courtesy of Breathing Color, then go to mbp.ac/p2p, P number 2P, and there's details there. But apart from that, I've got a plethora of links on my website, so you can just go to martinbaileyphotography.com. Sorry, Sarah, I'm having.
I love it.
You said it's a cornucopia of links.
Oh yes, I've got a cornucopia as well. Just look under the cornucopia menu.
Very cool. So it's all there. What is that? MartinBaileyPhotography.com?
MartinBaileyPhotography.com. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks to you both for coming on. Always a pleasure chatting with both of you. Always come away refreshed. I always come away with a page of links to go check out after the show. I'm always scribbling links. So thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. And listeners, if you want to check out our website, just head over to thisweekinphoto.com. And if you want to touch base with me, Frederick Van Johnson, you can find me at frederickvan.com. And also, we have another show out there currently. There's another one called All About the Gear. It's a This Week in Photo production. You can find that at thisweekinphoto/gear. thisweekinphoto.com/gear. And with that, it's time to take that lens cap off.